It's 5:30, and I welcome everybody to the Saugeen Shores Committee of Adjustment for today, Monday, January the 21st, 2019 at 5:30, and I call this meeting to order. And at this time, I ask members to make any acknowledgement of any pecuniary interest, either now or at the time it arises on the agenda. If not, then we acknowledge the receipt of the minutes, and we'll move on to additional business if there is any. And if not, we will move on to the public hearings, number 5.1, which is a minor variance, A-63-18.46. This is Barry's Construction on Hilker Street. Ms. Virtue.
Thank you. So this is a minor variance on the proposed property seen here. So it is just hatched on the map because it was subject to a recent severance, so that's just what that's showing. So it is at the corner of Hilker Street and Gustavus Street, so just off of Gustavus on Hilker. So just to provide a little bit more context, it is zoned R2, and it is in close proximity to the core commercial zone of Port Elgin. So this red that you see here is the core commercial zoning and designation. And then we've got the aerial view here. So the surrounding land uses are residential and commercial. There is municipal water and sewer and access from a municipal road. So the purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of a semi-detached dwelling on the existing vacant lot. So the application seeks relief from the minimum lot frontage, maximum lot coverage, minimum rear yard setback, and minimum exterior side yard setback. So just to go through the policies. In terms of the PPS, there are no issues from a provincial interest standpoint here. A archaeological assessment had been completed on the property for the previous application, so there's no issues on that front or for any other matters outlined in the PPS. In terms of the local official plan, it is designated residential. And the residential designation promotes a variety of housing forms and permits a range of dwelling types, so the proposal conforms to the official plan. In terms of the zoning bylaw, the R2 zone permits semi-detached dwellings, and as I mentioned, there are variances sought for 4 different provisions of the bylaw. So I'll just go back to the site plan, it might be a little bit easier to see. So in terms of the lot frontage, the bylaw requires a frontage for semis of 10 meters. The minimum frontage requested is 8.7 meters, and that's for the interior lot here. The other lot, this one here, it has a frontage of 9 meters, so it's slightly wider. Also, maximum lot coverage is being sought to be increased to 53%. Now, that calculation was noted by the applicant to include the deck, which I've confirmed with them is about 4% coverage. Now, they've requested that be included in order to provide more flexibility in case potential buyers would like the deck to be covered. Uncovered decks are not typically part of the coverage calculation in the zoning bylaw. So if it's uncovered, it doesn't count towards coverage. If it's covered, then it would. So this is just showing a deck here, but they have asked to include it in the coverage calculations, which is why they're asking for the 53% coverage. The bylaw permits a lot coverage up to 45%. The minimum rear yard setback is also requested to be reduced to 6 meters from 7.5. And the exterior side yard setback, which is this one here, between the dwelling and the lane, is being requested to be set back to 1.5 meters. Now, I did note in the report, and I'll note here, that in terms of this exterior side yard setback, the committee approved a similar variance in 2018 for another lot on file A18-1846. About a reduction in the exterior side yard setback to the same amount, 1.5 meters. And that decision was appealed to the LPAT, but the decision of the committee was upheld by the LPAT, so the LPAT did accept that decision, that 4.5 meters was appropriate from the laneway. And so it is appropriate in this instance to allow for the same side yard setback as permitted in an interior lot because it is a lane and not a full municipal street. It's my opinion that the other variances being sought in terms of the, just the variances being sought in terms of the lot frontage and the rear yard are minor departures from the provisions of the zoning bylaw. And despite the variances, the required lot size, landscape space, parking, and height are all being maintained. In terms of agency comments, there are no issues raised by any of the circulated agencies. The town had no comments, and there was nothing raised by the SPCA in terms of natural heritage or by any other agencies. We didn't receive any public comments in regards to this application prior to this meeting. And so in terms of the 4 tests, I've gone through the first 2, and in terms of test 3, is the variance requested desirable and appropriate? I believe that it is. It will permit the construction of a semi, which is a higher form of density, which is desirable in proximity to the core. To the commercial core area, and represents an appropriate form of development on the lot that a semi is approved through the zoning, and it's all relatively minor variances being sought, in my opinion. And so in terms of test 4, is the variance minor? I believe that it is. It shouldn't have, and none of the proposed variances should have an impact on the character of the area or the ability of adjacent property owners to use their property for the permitted uses. So, with that, I do recommend approval of the application, subject to any comments received by the public at this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Fortier. Would the applicant wish to address the committee? No, sir. Any members of the public that wish to discuss this case? Not committee. Any questions? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, I have a question, Tessa, about point D on the minimum exterior side yard setback. When I asked you about the exterior side yard setback, you said it was 4.5 meters, is that right? That's according to the bylaw, or is that according to the precedent that was set earlier?
No, according to the bylaw. According
to the bylaw, okay. Mm-hmm. And so the proposed setback is 1.5 meters?
Yeah.
Is that municipal lane wide enough for emergency vehicles to access, or do you anticipate that there would be other methods of getting in if there was an issue in terms of an emergency?
So, through you, Mr. Chair, what was discussed at during the previous application for a similar variance, and what was confirmed by the fire chief during that appeal, was that emergency vehicles will not use the lanes. They aren't finished. They aren't up to a municipal standard. They can't bring trucks through there. They are not part of their plans. They will use the streets and go through the properties, so it's really not a consideration. Also, in this case, the lane doesn't continue through. So while on the mapping it's shown to continue, the lane doesn't continue through like a lot of them do. This is actually where it ends. It's already been kind of blocked off through the development of the old arena here. So it's unlikely to ever come up to any kind of standard.
Anyone else? I have a motion moved by Mr. Gibbons and seconded by Councillor Grace, dated today, January the 21st, that minor variance application A-63-18.46 be approved, subject to the following conditions: that the minimum lot frontage be no less than 8.7 meters, that the maximum lot coverage be no more than 53%, that the minimum rear yard setback be no less than 6 meters, that the exterior side yard setback be no less than 1.5 meters, that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw, and that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A attached to the decision sheet and forming part of this decision. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Circulate the decision sheet. Our next item on the agenda is 5.2. This is a minor variance A-64-18.46. This is Ruth Victor of municipal address of 109 McVicker Street. Ms. Fortier.
Thank you. So this is another minor variance. So this is for a property that's at the intersection of McVicker Street and Lustig Lane. So McVicker Street is a municipal road. Lustig Lane is a private right-of-way. So just to provide a little bit more site context, on the aerial, the lot is shown as vacant, but a house is kind of semi-constructed currently on the property. It's framed and put up and largely built, just needs some finishing work. And so the area is residential, as you can see, and then there's some open space for in close proximity to the harbor. It is serviced with municipal water and sewer and does front onto a year-round municipal road, but does also take access off of the private right-of-way. So the purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of an attached garage. The application seeks relief from the minimum rear yard setback. So in this case, McVicker Street is considered the front yard because it is the municipal street. So even though it's the longer of the two lot lines, and typically the shorter would be considered the front, in this case we consider the frontage to be the municipal road. And so this is the rear yard here, technically, even though the house is oriented towards Lustig Lane. Kind of this is the front door, porch, and it looks out towards Lustig Lane. It is considered, this is the rear yard here. And so a previous minor variance application allowed for a reduced minor rear yard setback of 3.61 meters for the house. Now they have constructed it further back than that. And they have filed this new minor variance in order to allow the construction of the attached garage and are requesting that they reduced rear yard of just under 1 meter, 0.96 meters, be approved just for the attached garage. So that's what's on the property. This is a little older, so there might have been more work done since then, but you can see it's largely constructed, the dwelling on the property. In terms of the policies, there's no issues from a PPS standpoint. In terms of the local official plan, it is residential, so the designation supports the proposed use, and the proposed attached garage does not alter the residential nature or character of the site. The proposal meets the intent of the official plan. In terms of the zoning bylaw, the subject property is zoned residential first density, and the zone permits the proposed use. The proposed development meets all the required zoning provisions, save for the proposed rear yard setback. So the proposed exterior wall is about 5.3 meters from the lot line. Despite the reduced setback for the garage, there's still adequate room to maneuver around the property and provide drainage and access. And there's still sufficient amenity space on the property. The coverage is still within the provisions of the bylaw. In terms of consultation, there were no issues raised by any of the circulated agencies. We did receive public comments for this application. The full comments are included in the report. They were received from Bill Inkster at 105 McVicker Street. And they raised issues including with the reduced setback. They had some questions about the definition of the various yards on the property, the driveway, and yard setback from the lane. So just to respond to those main issues that were raised, as I said, it's considered the front McVicker because it is the municipal road. Lustig Lane is not considered a street per the bylaw, as it remains a private right-of-way. So the lot line along Lustig Lane is really considered a side lot line per the bylaw, so they really only need to meet a 1.5 meter setback on this side, as they've kind of shown here. However, the proposed site plan shows that the proposed garage will be set back 6 meters, just over 6 meters from the front of the garage to the right-of-way. Access is being taken from here, so the proposed garage would come off of the right-of-way, so there's no entrance permit required from the municipality. And there was some questions in Mr. Inkster's comments about the position of the driveway, but it would still have to meet the provision of the bylaw that it be at least 1 meter from the proposed, or it would have to be 1 meter from the existing lot line, so there would still be a meter here between the garage and the edge of the driveway. And so there was also some questions raised that none of the yards meet the 1.5 meter setback, but as I said, coverage remains at 26%, so there is significantly amenity space and pervious area on the property. And there's large 6 meter yards at the front and at the side here as well. So just then, in terms of the test, there were other designs contemplated by the owner which would have met the zoning bylaw, but they weren't deemed to be as desirable because it would have had the proposed garage well out in front, right up to the lane, basically. With this configuration, it lines up quite closely to the garage to the north, so their desire was to retain the existing streetscape and not have it be way out in front. It would also have to be kind of turned so that the entrance to the garage would be on this side, so you kind of flip it around, was the other one contemplated, and it just, from a streetscape perspective, the owner decided that they wanted the variance in order to maintain that consistent streetscape. And so they did take care to place it in a way that would have the least impact on the neighboring property owner, despite the fact that it is closer to the lot line. This has a much smaller visual impact than the alternative. So it is deemed to be appropriate in this case. In terms of it being minor, this shouldn't impact the character of the area. In fact, it should maintain the character of the area, and shouldn't impact any adjacent property owners on their ability to use their property for permitted uses. So I do believe it is a minor application. So with that, I do recommend approval based on any comments heard today.
Thank you, Ms. Fortier. Does the applicant wish to address the committee? Any member of the public that wishes to address on this case? Please state your name and come to the microphone, please.
And one of the major concerns we have is for the laneway, because we all give a right-of-way, that there's that 15 feet that allows everybody to kind of use that as their property, but it's not. I mean, it is, but it isn't. We have to allow access in and out of the driveway, for everyone to go up. And where their garage is proposed, it was left a little bit as to how long the garage is and how much driveway is going to be from the garage to the laneway. Just to make sure, if cars are, some people have 20-foot long cars, you park a car in the driveway, are you impeding upon the laneway? Is everybody going to be trying to go around the extra cars? Is there only going to be one driveway? Or are they going to try and maintain the driveway that used to be there, as well as have a driveway at the garage?
Just a question in regards to because we own property on both Lustig and McVicker, and so the property we have on Lustig, we own to the middle of the laneway, and there's a right-of-way there. And so we're not sure on this diagram here if that is from the middle of the road there for that property, to include that in the setback, because there is a 15-foot right-of-way that goes through there. And I'm not sure on this drawing if that's it says it's a 22 foot wide garage, but it doesn't give us the distance as how far out towards the road. actually going to be, it's going to be 22 by, I'm not sure the depth there. It's not information that was provided to us as well. So
Yep, I'm happy to point that out on the site plan. So
Okay.
this part here, so I was trying to study here. So this part here, kind of where this line is, that's the edge of the right-of-way. So this kind of area would be the traveled right-of-way. So that's, so it's all part of their lot, right? Just like you, so the whole thing, part of the lot, but then this part 5 here is the lane. And so the distance between the edge of the garage and the edge of the lane here is just over 6 meters. Which is the same as what we would require in the front yard setback. So that's kind of deemed to be enough room to park a car in front of a garage so it doesn't impede into the laneway.
Okay.
So with the other proposed configuration, meeting the bylaw and putting it here would have been within 1.5, and they would have had to do an entrance somewhere else. But yes, this is 6 meters here between the edge of the garage and the edge of the right-of-way.
Okay.
And is that normal for a driveway then?
Yes, yeah. All of our bylaws in Saugeen Shores, 6 meters is the required front yard, so that's the standard distance.
Okay. And so they still have to be because it's a private laneway, do they still have to follow the driveway setbacks then? You mentioned there you still have to be the meter away for your...
That's from a lot line. Yeah, so that has something to do with the entrance. That's just driveways in Saugeen Shores have to be 1 meter from the property line.
So it still has to be that even though...
1 meter from the property line here, yeah.
Even though we're not 1 meter away with the garage.
With
from
the edge
property
of
line.
with the edge of the, with the edge of the building it is, but usually your driveway's a little bit shorter, smaller than your building, right? Like your driveway doesn't go to the edge of the garage, usually your wall will be in between. So here, they're at a meter, there's just 4 centimeters off, right? So I would imagine the width of their wall is at least 4 centimeters, so they would naturally meet that setback.
So you're saying that the building itself will be less than what the driveway required for your bylaw?
Just by 4 centimeters, yeah.
There's no one else. We'll move on to the committee. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I sent this message or question to Tessa earlier, and my question is about when I drove over there, there's a big tree on the northwest part of the property, and I was wondering whose property the tree's on. And I don't know if you can answer that, if there's somebody else who represents the owner who can answer that. I just when I looked at it, I thought, okay, is that tree on the neighbors, the property of the neighbors to the north, or does it is it partway, is the trunk of the tree? I don't know if anybody can answer that. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to Tessa. Tessa, could you put, I just need a point of clarification. Could you put the picture of the front of the cottage up again? And where we see the overhang on the left, is that the part that will be taken out to put a garage in?
Yes, yeah, the garage is proposed to kind of be fit in here, so yeah, it'll kind of be built out from that doorway. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Matheson and seconded by Councillor Rich, dated today, January the 21st, that minor variance application A-67, sorry, correction, I have a motion moved by Councillor Rich and seconded by Mr. Gibbons, dated today, January the 21st, that minor variance application A-64-18.46 be approved. subject to the following conditions: that the rear yard setback for the proposed garage be no less than 0.96 meter, that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw, and that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A, attached to the decision sheet and forming part of this decision. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda, thank you. Our next item is number 5.3. This is minor variance A-67-18.46 for Mr. John Skinner and with municipal address of 456 Ridge Street. Ms. Fortier.
Thank you. Jay? So this is an application for the property at 456 Ridge Street. So it's right at the intersection of Ridge Street and Provençal Drive in Port Elgin. So you've got the aerial view of the property there. It is, and the zoning is R1. So it is residential in use. The surrounding uses are residential and environmental protection. So to the rear, this is kind of the ridge, the Lake Ridge in Port Elgin, and the trail. So it does back onto the trail and servicing corridor there. It is serviced with municipal water and sewer and takes access from a year-round municipal road, Ridge Street. So the application is to facilitate the construction of a detached garage. So there's an existing dwelling on the property. It is more than just a foundation these days. But it's in that same location as shown. So the applicant seeks relief from the minimum rear yard and side yard setbacks for accessory structures over 60 square meters in a residential zone. The bylaw requires a setback of 1.5 meters. The proposed setback from both lot lines is 1.9 meters, or about 3 feet. So in terms of the policies, there are no issues from a PPS standpoint in this case. The local official plan, it is residential. The designation supports the proposed use. The proposed detached garage does not alter the residential nature or character of the site, so it does meet the official plan. In terms of the zoning bylaw, the property is zoned residential first density, and the zone permits accessory structures. So the detached garage is subject to Section 3.1 of the zoning bylaw. Section 3.1.6 requires that structures greater than 60 square meters be located no closer than 1.5 meters from the side and rear lot lines. So the intent of the setback is to ensure adequate drainage and access to the building. Planning staff are of the opinion that approximately 1 meter is the necessary minimum width to provide adequate room and drainage away from the structure. The proposal meets all the other zoning provisions. Minimum lot coverage and landscaped area are still met despite the addition of the new garage. And so part of the reason for this proposal was there's an existing driveway here, and having it here does allow it to be lined up a little bit more closely with the existing driveway. It also maintains the largest possible separation between the detached garage and the existing dwelling without compromising drainage and access to the proposed building. In terms of consultation, there are no issues raised by any of the circulated agencies, and we received no public comments in regards to the file. So in terms of the 4 tests, in terms of zoning bylaw and official plan, it does meet the intent and purpose. Is it desirable and appropriate? I believe that it is. Any potential visual impacts, especially from the rear, are reduced because this is a servicing corridor and trail, so there's never going to be anything built really back here in terms of structures, so there's no issue on that end of things from the rear. And it's a minor, I would say, adjustment in both cases in terms of the proximity to the yards. Adequate space remains on the property for drainage, access, and amenity. In terms of, is it minor? I believe that it is. I don't believe that the variance will impact the character of the area or the ability of adjacent property owners to use their property for permitted uses. So with that, I do recommend approval of the application pending any public comments received today.
Thank you, Ms. Fortier. Would the applicant wish to address the committee? No, sir. Any members of the public that wish to address in this case, please come to the microphone and state your name, madam, please.
Mr. Skinner and
What's your name, madam? I'm sorry.
Edith LaFlamme and Ron LaFlamme.
Thank you.
And first of all, the size of the garage, 40 feet, is twice the size of a normal garage. And the resale value of our house will be affected with this garage because you'll only see a wall. And buyers oftentimes won't buy a house that has a variance on it. Our builder told us that, you know, it'll be crowding over and anybody else that they don't oftentimes look at a house that has a variance. And, you know, we wouldn't be able to put anything up. If we decided to put another building up beside it, there wouldn't be enough space between the two. And, you know, we also have a shed, which Mr. Skinner also has a shed that's not showing up. But we also have a shed there, and with where he wants to put the garage, it takes it so that if we want to take something out of our shed to go to the front, we're going to have to rub along the side of his garage in order to get a lawnmower out there because it's going to be so close. And I just think it's ridiculous to put that size of a garage up in a residential area when all we're going to do is look at a wall. And 40 feet's quite a big building. It's more of a building than a garage.
I don't know if it matters, but also Mr. Skinner took it upon himself to remove what was there as a fence. It was a hedge. I realize it's on his property.
He says it is.
But there's no demarcation of where our property ends and his starts.
And I brought pictures of where he wants to actually put the building up. And you can see from there it's going to totally cut off our back view. I mean, a smaller one would do it one thing, but 40 foot, like it comes up almost it comes up to the edge of our house, which, you know, it kind of makes it very unnoticeable or very undesirable. These are pictures that we took, and this being our hedge, this being our shed, and he wants to put the garage right to over here, which means anything we... It's not a garage, it's more of a building. And with now having, this would be his house, a shed, and this 40-foot garage or building would really cut off from the backyard.
With the space that's there too, if Mr. Skinner needs a problem with his driveway, I mean, the amount of money he's going to put to build the building, he could as well add to straightening up his driveway or reroute it somewhat.
Yeah. See, the way he's got his driveway on the drawing there, the driveway doesn't go that far. He's going to extend his driveway. It only goes to the edge of his house right now. So he wants to extend it from the edge of his house to where his garage is right now, which will, not only will we have the garage, then we're going to have this driveway all along. Quite undesirable. I think it's actually ridiculous.
Mr. Didini, go ahead.
Can you tell me the setback from your shed to the property line?
I'm sorry,
The setback, how far back from the property line is your shed?
It's at the far corner of our house.
From
okay,
Oh,
yeah.
whatever the variances, we had it built, and I don't know, whatever the variances they,
you didn't get a minor variance for it? It
no,
was-
no.
So what would a setback for something like that be, Tessa? 3 meters? I don't know, 3.
It would be 1.2, I think,
yeah,
if it's less than 60.
The space
And
between,
and our shed is not permanent, it can be moved, like it's not on a cement footage, it can be picked up and moved. It's got blocks on it, like concrete blocks, but it's also on railroad ties, so it could be moved. It's not considered a permanent building.
the narrow space that we're talking about is if I put my fingertips to the side of the hedge on our shed, this shoulder is the property line. It's where Mr. Skinner's got this, the stake to indicate
Staked it
that.
out as soon as he came. But we thought that the hedges were on the property line, but Mr. Skinner said they weren't. So he decided to take them down, which was fine. I thought they were on our property line. But we've been there since the house has been new and, you know, never had any trouble. We get along fine with everybody, but this just seemed a little outrageous to us.
Very much.
Okay.
Committee. Mr. Gibbons?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, likely to Tessa or Mr. Skinner, the shed seems to be where the driveway would have to go to get to the new garage.
Actually, I'm a little sort of startled here because I spoke to all my neighbors and Edith, Ron was ill at the time. I took her out and we talked about it and I asked if, before I put the application, if there was any problems. So I did take the measurement that you were asking between their shed and where the stake is, and that's 5 feet. Now the stake is from the plans, original plans, from the edge of the house to the foundation to the property line, and it's 19.3 feet or 4 feet, I believe. It's on the city floor plan, which I have a copy of. Would you like to see this?
No, excuse me, I was actually asking about the shed you presently have, whether that has to be taken down in order to have the driveway go
the shed
through.
I have?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's in the far corner of the other corner of the room, yes. Do you see that?
So I thought this was the shed there.
No, their shed is this one
No,
here.
your shed.
Oh, no, this shows on the plan, that's just like a mudroom. It's way over in this back corner.
Okay, so this white block here is...
Oh, this is an older picture.
Okay.
That was a shed from previous owners, I guess, about, well, that shed is the one they moved onto her property. Like, that's years ago. Can I mention anything else? Or?
Sure.
So, you saw the picture that's up there in the shape of the garage. I wanted to have a garage that went in the back part of the property. Like you said, it's just a walkway and it's a ridge there that goes down. It's all woods in that. And the reason I put the application in is I just figured 5 feet from a vacant land seemed to waste, instead of, it gave me 2 more feet for the garage in that. Most garages are 20 by 30, but I didn't want to encroach in my backyard past the house. I could go in and go behind the house, eh? Now, there's people across the street. They have the same roughly sized garage, but it's turned sideways, so it's long ways. So whether it was this way or I put it that way, it would still, obviously it's a building, it would block the view. It would be starting behind at the edge, the proposed with the 5 feet from their shed and then 3 feet, that's 8 feet between the property. That's a bit of distance. I don't know if you'd scrape anything going by there because there was, like they had mentioned, there was a shrub that had grown over past the property line and they still went by there. They have like a stone walkway. So I didn't, like I said, I didn't know if there was any of these problems. Or their concerns. I would have addressed it. So. Well, it's a little longer than normal, but I already went before I decided to have it drawn up in that with the building permits to see if I could construct it. So it's not just, you know, I went through all the questions before I proposed this. But today, it's just with the side and the rear lot is that I was questioning.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, may I ask a question of Mr. and Mrs. Laflamme? And that, you don't need to stand up or anything, I'm sure, but your shed that you're concerned about, is it on that picture? Can we see it from that photograph, or has that been added? Okay. And the garage, would that be built farther back? So, okay, it's kind of hard for me to visualize since it's not on the diagram we see. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Skinner, have you considered other designs then for the garage? Did you consider going the other way and right? But if you had not a 40-foot, but say a 20 or 25-foot garage, it would be set further back, and you could actually swerve around the house to get into your garage, right? Know what I mean? No. So then it would take up too much of your backyard, is what your concern is? Right. And you mentioned that you have been working with the building department to and this is somebody that's going to build it for you, or? Oh, as far as the design, though, is. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Is there any other comments to be made? One thing is that if this was 29 centimeters over, we wouldn't be here. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Matheson, seconded by Councillor Rich, dated today, January the 21st, that minor variance application A-67-18.46 be approved, subject to the following conditions: that the rear yard setback for the proposed garage be no less than .91 meter, that the side yard setback from the proposed garage be no less than .91 meter, that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw, and that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A, attached to the decision sheet and forming part of this decision. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Our next meeting date is scheduled for February the 18th, 2019. Family Day, that's right. So Tuesday, February the 19th, 2019. And I have a motion moved by Mr. Legault and seconded by Councillor Gray, stated today, January the 21st, that we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of the Secretary Treasurer. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, everyone.